As Chris and Sana were trying out various functions of Oromorus, Martis came in.
We will arrive shortly, please prepare.
Martis said, bowing his head and returning to the cockpit.
Oh, have we arrived already?
Sana asked in surprise. Chris tilted his head and looked out the window. It was still pitch black outside. However, instead of the pitch black darkness from a moment ago, the light in Adamasker's room was faintly shining. Sana walked over to the window, turned around and said, "It looks like we're underwater."
It's an underwater city, so it must be at the bottom of the ocean.
Chris agreed.
But would we explore the Dragon Stone in such pitch black? Besides, if we were at the bottom of the ocean, we wouldn't be able to breathe and would be crushed by the water pressure.
When Chris harbored such concerns, the lights in the room were turned off, enveloping it in darkness.
We have arrived.
Martis' voice echoed.
Everyone, please summon the map of Atlias on Oromorus.
Everyone followed the instructions and operated Oromorus. Then, a blue light map of Atlias appeared before their eyes as a 3D hologram. The city of Atlias displayed was quite large, perhaps twice as large as the Teos. "I did it," Beeb's voice rang out.
Now, please open the eye mark at the bottom right.
There was indeed an eye mark at the bottom right. When Chris opened it, the words, Aldo, and Coldo, appeared side by side.
Please select Aldo.
When selected Aldo, like clicking the mouse, Chris' vision became brighter as if turning on a light. Sana let out a voice of admiration.
Well then, let's get going.
Martis instructed, standing on the central disc.
Are we going to go in the water?
In response to Sana's question, Martis shook his head.
No, we are not.
Without meeting her gaze, Martis answered with his eyes cast downward. Since all the underground people she met were sociable, Sana found Martis's behavior to be a bit businesslike. Perplexed by Martis, who offered no further answers, Sana turned to Chris, only to see him shrug his shoulders. Dad said that the underwater city has a barrier that provides air, so even non-aquatic people can live there. Clare said, turning around from the disc. Chris and Sana looked at each other. Maybe, it'll be fine. With determination, they both get onto the disc at the same time. Then, instead of the floor, the ceiling opened up and the disc began to rise. Because there's a barrier around the city, people from other dimensions like the surface people can't recognize it even if they're looking from the outside. Clare explained on the rising disc. When the disc reached the top, there was a small, cozy space. The ceiling is awfully high. Following Martis, everyone stepped onto the concrete floor. Then the stone door in front of them slid open, and a man dressed in black knight-like armor walked in. His skin is blue, and the hair that hangs down his cheeks is black and sticky. He's a little hunched over and not very tall, maybe around 170 centimeters or so. The man bowed as soon as he entered.
Welcome to the underwater city of Atlias.
The man looked up and his eyes were unusually large. Also, his eyes were far apart, making him look like a fish. Both ears are large and pointed, and the chin is thin and pointed.
It's been a while, sir.
The man said with a grin, greeting Martis. In response, Martis silently nodded without a smile.
I'm sorry for the late introduction, but I'm Enabost, I'm a soldier of Poseidon. I understand your purpose, but first, you have a message from the Underwater City Council, so I will guide you to Poseidon.
After introducing himself, the man who called himself Enabost started walking towards the exit. Unlike the underground people, he walks on his own feet. Chris and the others followed Enabost out of the room. Then they walked straight down the dimly lit passage. When Enabost touched the wall at the end, an exit appeared. Beyond the door was outside. Compared to the hallway, it's much brighter outside. But still, it's about as bright as a cloudy day on the surface world. The sky was overall tinged with gray. It was as if the clouds were low and covering the entire sky. The ground is made of concrete and rises high like a levee. On both sides of the embankment, there were wide canals, and across these canals, there was another embankment. The embankments and canals alternated in this way, continuing endlessly in a curved shape. Ahead of them, a high wall rises up into the sky. Elandra went straight for the wall. The lower part of the wall was a tunnel that could be passed through. The water in the canal was a clear blue, and it was hard to believe that it was the bottom of the ocean. But surely, it is only because of the Ouromoros that it looks this way. While Chris was thinking about this and walking along the edge of the embankment, Elandra warned him.
Be careful, don't fall into the water. This is the bottom of the sea, 10,000 meters deep. If you're not an underwater person like us, you'll be flattened in an instant, hee hee hee.
Hearing this, Chris hurried back to the center of the embankment. Upon exiting the tunnel, the atmosphere completely changed. The sky is clear and very bright. On the left there was a wharf with a large wooden boat moored there. Beyond the wharf, a magnificent scene unfolded, so breathtaking that it made one forget this was an undersea world.
Wow, amazing!
Sana exclaimed in admiration, moving to the end of the dock. Chris followed. From that elevated spot, they could take in a panoramic view of the entire town. The stone-built streets stretch out indefinitely, sloping gently downhill. In addition, many ships were flying above the city.
Well, I will take you to Poseidon on this ship. Please come aboard.
Saying this, Elandra had already boarded the ship. Martis stood motionless at the foot of the stone steps leading up to the ship.
Oh, sorry.
Martis's expressionless face looked as if he was angry, so Chris and Sana instinctively bowed their heads and hurried back. The ship was slightly higher at the bow and stern. In the center of the deck was a wooden platform like a lectern with a blue round ball on it, but no steering wheel was in sight.
Well then, we will depart.
After confirming that everyone had boarded the ship, Elandra moved to the central platform. Then, when he touched the round ball, the sails automatically unfurled and the ship began to move slowly. The ship traveling along the waterway floated up into the air as the waterway dropped downward like a waterfall. The city spread out below had a slightly old-fashioned feel compared to the futuristic city in the underground world. All the buildings are made of stone, and temples like those found in Greece and Rome stand here and there. The city was crisscrossed with waterways, on which many ships of all sizes passed.
Hey, look at that!
As Chris leaned over the railing of the deck to look at the view of the city, Sana tapped him on the shoulder. Sana pointed to a dilapidated ship that looked like a ghost ship flying in the sky.
Wow, that's amazing.
Chris gasped. There was only one underwater person on the deck, who looked similar to Elandra.
That's a ship that was lost and repaired from the surface world.
As Chris and Sana followed the ghost ship flying away, Elandra said.
There are quite a few, the ones that get lost. Most of them are ones that have sunk. Some of them happen to travel between dimensions by accident, but anyway, we reuse a lot of those ships here. And there are some eccentrics who think it's better to leave them in their old condition, rather than cleaning them up like this one.
Oh, I see,
Sana said, nodding exaggeratedly. It was Sana's usual response when she found someone annoying. Apparently, Sana doesn't like Elandra. Turning to Chris, she pointedly changed the topic. Shall we check where we are in Ouromoros? According to the map of Ouromoros, the place they were in was a town called Ascension, located right in the center of Atlas. And Poseidon is the central building of Acenibus. It's probably something like Orcatheos in the Teos. According to the map, it seemed they would soon arrive at Poseidon.
That is Poseidon.
Enebos pointed to a towering stone structure that loomed ahead. It is a huge cylindrical building with a large temple on the roof. The temple was surrounded by a circular moat, where many ships were moored. After landing the ship in the moat, Enebos guided them to the temple. At the entrance to the temple, a soldier stood on each side. Each holds a large, three-pronged, fork-like spear in his hand. The two soldiers bowed to Chris and the others as they were led by Enebos. The temple was crowded with people. Some of them are speaking out loud. Those people who speak were clearly from surface world. Their sturdy bodies were covered in tattoos, and they looked like pirates. They were casting glances at Elandra, exchanging loud words and laughing. The words were in a foreign language, but Chris and Sana were able to understand them through telepathy. From what they've heard, it seems like everyone is crazy about Elandra.
They are humans who have been disrupting the order of the sea.
Said Enebos, walking ahead.
But you see, they found out about our world, and it was convenient for them to give us information about the surface world, so we decided to make a deal. You have something like that in your world, right?
By your world, probably he refers to the underground world. Enebos believes that both Chris and Sana are underground dwellers. Chris didn't say anything, he just nodded back. In the center of the building was a reception desk where two women were sitting. There were several elevators lined up on both sides of the building, and as soon as the doors opened, people rushed to get in. Chris and his group were guided to the elevator at the very back. In front of it, a soldier was standing guard. He has a three-pronged spear in his hand. The soldier bowed to Enebos and stepped back from in front of the elevator. Then he operated something on the counter to his left. Soon after, the elevator doors opened. Following Enebos, everyone got into the elevator. However, for some reason, Chris was the only one who couldn't get in. Even if he tried to step inside, he was repelled by an invisible barrier. There was a repulsion, just like bringing the same poles of magnets close together.
The one you're carrying around at your waist.
Enebos said, pointing at Chris's dagger.
Excuse me,
said the soldier holding out his hand. Chris removed his dagger and handed it to the soldier.
That's the Rebellipes, a guiding stone for finding the crystal element. It was a gift from the Teos, and he didn't bring it here as a weapon.
Elandra explained, shielding Chris, who looked worried. The soldier looked at Enebos for confirmation.
Well, that's no problem. Just deactivate it.
The soldier nodded and handed the dagger back to Chris. Then he operated the counter again.
please go ahead.
The soldier said without looking up. Chris bowed and stepped gingerly into the elevator. This time, Chris was able to get in without any problems. As soon as Chris entered, the door was closed. The elevator is spacious enough, but a little dim, with only a faint blue glow on the walls and ceiling. The elevator descended faster and faster. When the speed slowed down, it continued forward without stopping. Then it moved in a circle, went down again, and then went back. In this way, the elevator moved up and down, turning back and forth and left and right. Chris tried to check his location on Ouromoros, but it only showed him he was in Poseidon, with no further details. Apparently the building is under security.